This is Josh Bycer from GameWisdom.com. Hope you enjoy this critical thought, your daily discussion on game design. And be sure to like and subscribe to the channel, and you can pitch future critical thought topics. Alright, before we get going with today's critical thought, a little bit of some administration news. First, we got our first $12 donation on Patreon for a guest critical thought for the month of March. I'll be posting about this on Patreon this weekend, and we'll try to set something up. If you'd like to get on the fun, once again, you can find us on Patreon under Game Wisdom or GW Bycer. There are currently 11 slots left, and if things do fill up, we'll see about maybe either adding more or what will happen there. Also, with Neo, I'm thinking about pulling the rest of the Let's Break just because I'm not seeing a lot of interest in it, and I've already made some explanation videos which I think have done more or have gotten more views than my regular plays. So let me know in the comments below, would you like to still see some footage of Neo other than like little bits and pieces I've recorded? Otherwise, we'll probably move on to, I guess, the next big game. I'll see maybe about getting Nier, but we'll see what happens there. Other than that, let's get today's critical thought. And as I said at the start of this week, it was supposed to be all about Nintendo, and then it just seemed like the news threw some curveballs. Yesterday with the announcement of Xbox Game Pass, Twitch now getting into buying and selling games. This was supposed to be my rest week. GDC is that time that is supposed to be the time that I can just rest, make fluff pieces, not have to worry about doing too much hard work, and it seems that fate has conspired against me. I'm sure tomorrow will announce that Sega will get back into the hardware market, and then who knows what will happen on Friday. But I'm going to take the day off from Nintendo critical thoughts because we want to talk about streaming games. And this was a suggestion a few months ago that was made for a critical thought, and this seems to be the perfect time to talk about it with the Xbox Game Pass. If you missed my piece on Game Wisdom, the link should be down below. But the act of streaming games as an alternative to buying them has certainly been gaining some traction over the last few years. And for me, I still remember the old days before we even had internet and this was an option. And even around here, in my house, streaming is still considered that weird new thing. You don't even want to know what I had to do to talk to my parents about on-demand, let alone like Netflix and Hulu. But streaming has been gaining some major traction lately, and we'll talk about the Xbox Game Pass in a few minutes. When it comes to streaming and digital distribution, this has all been ways of pushing the retail stores out of the equation when it comes to buying and selling games. In the old days, retailers like GameStop, Electronic Boutique, Babbage's, and so on had absolute control over what games would be on stores and specifically where they would appear in those stores. Doesn't matter if you get in the store if your game is way in the back behind cat fancy magazines or whatever else they stock there. And this gave stores a lot of leeway. And besides making sure your game passed the publisher's quota or checklist, you also make sure your game was, retail friendly. You weren't going to see a game like The Binding of Isaac at Walmart. And it definitely took some pushing to get stuff like Grand Theft Auto into Targets and stuff like that. And as we all know, when it comes to selling your game, not only does the developer take a cut of each copy sold, but so does the publisher, and of course the store itself. And that is a very big deal. And it's been one that has been a constant struggle or a constant argument about with publishers and retailers. We can of course bring up the whole used game debate as another major part, but that may be another 10-15 minutes that I don't want to get into today. And as we've seen over the last few years, there have been many different ways of pushing back against retailers or trying to downplay their importance. There was, of course, Project $10 as a way to cut back on used copies. And, of course, digital distribution has been a major part of that. And digital distribution has kind of been the lead into with streaming games. And streaming, when it comes to playing games, is simply the act of using the internet to download games which you can then play without needing to own the copy or even download, all the files for it. And This, as that has been mentioned multiple times, is the Netflix model, or the streaming television model, which that, my friends, is probably its own discussion right there. But the idea or the allure of this is that it allows you to save money by the fact that you're not buying things outright. When it comes to television, it means we don't need, a $100, $200 cable package from Comcast, Verizon, or anything along those lines. Now, the downside of streaming, and what has been one of the things that I think has been an interesting discussion, is the fact that you're not really given complete control. I can't go into Netflix and watch anything I want. I am limited by what's available on their catalog. And what that means is if I want to watch, the latest, brand new shows, that I will have to wait some time for, with exception to, the Netflix exclusives, the Daredevil, Jessica Jones, and so on. And when it comes to the video game industry, this is where we get some very interesting debates. As I've said, retailers have been controlling the video game market for some time, but their importance and relevancy has been becoming less and less over recent years. And as an interesting aside, one thing that I was thinking about before I started with today's critical thought was the fact that I'm kind of surprised that the major publishers haven't gotten together to try and take GameStop and Best Buy completely out of the equation. As you know, Nintendo has their specialty store, Nintendo World, in New York. But I'm just wondering why we haven't seen the publishers get together and have specialty stores. A store that sells everything and everything PlayStation, everything and everything Nintendo and Microsoft, and so on. Now, there are obviously some basic reasons why. The logistics, for one, would be massive. We're talking about game developers, not retail stores. And I think that's been a major point. And then there's the fact that in order for this to work, everyone would have to get on the same page to basically take GameStop out of the equation. And I don't think that the publishers are willing to cooperate along that front just yet. But this is why this talk about streaming is so important. As I said at the start, the big news this week is the Xbox Game Pass. And if you missed the announcement, here's the gist of it. The Xbox Game Pass will be a $9.99 a month subscription model that basically lets you get access to their rotating catalog of games. And this is very similar to, of course, EA Access and PlayStation Now. But there is one major exception, and this is what has a lot of people very interested. Unlike stuff like Netflix, Hulu, and those other models, Xbox Game Pass gives you the option to buy those games. Any game that is currently available in the Xbox Game Pass library, if you want to buy it, you'll get a 20% discount and a possible 10% discount on any of its DLC. Now, of course, like I said, that only runs while it is currently available on the library. If the game is rotated out and you don't buy it, then you lose that 20% discount. But with that said, this is an easy way to recoup your loss, recoup that $9.99. Even if you just play 2 or 3 games a month, if those games are 20, 30 plus normally to buy, well, you just saved a lot of money. Now, with that said, of course, I'm thinking just like with Hulu and Netflix, they're not going to put brand new games on there. That would be insane to put a $60 game up to play for $9.99. But with the growing back catalog, that is a lot of savings and a lot of money Microsoft will be pocketing. With that said, it still raises the question of how the developers will get on this. I'm sure they will have to get some proceeds of that $9.99 a month in order to have their game listed on the library. But this will still be a big deal because, again, services like this are designed to get the people who haven't already bought the game. Someone who's not buying your game at $60 is essentially giving you zero. But if they do your subscription model for $9.99, you're still making some money for it. And the fact that it is a rotating catalog means that they're not going to own your game forever. Now, with that said, I want to ask you guys a question. Obviously, for those of you who are subscribed to the YouTube channel here or visit Game Wisdom, I'm sure we have a pretty big cross-section of people who are either on the young side or interested about gaming industry, and those of you who are on the older side who may have already gotten in or making games right now. So my question for you is, what do you think about this idea of streaming games as an alternative to retail? Do you like it? Are you willing to put up with the restriction that you're not owning these games for the most part, with exception to, of course, the Xbox Game Pass right now? Let me know what you think in the comments below. For myself, I'm still of the old mind that I like to own these games. I like to be able to, go on Steam or go to my massive library of games downstairs whenever I feel the itch to play a game, and then it's mine. And I think part of that goes back to when I think of replayability, I also revisit games that are unique but may have been completely linear. Your Killer 7s, RPG, stuff like that. And I do like to replay those from time to time. If I ever have the time, that's always the other challenge. But that's kind of thing that I think has been keeping streaming out of my house, at least for right now. But as prices go down and as availability goes up, it will be very telling to see how things change. Now, when it comes to the act of streaming games, obviously a major factor is broadband access. And that's been one of the major walls when it comes to, going full digital when it comes to video games. Hence why we still need retail stores like Best Buy, GameStop, and I'm sure there are a lot more out there. But as we've been seeing over the last few years, internet access has been becoming more and more readily available, and of course, growing in power. I mean, my goodness, I remember when 5 meg upload was, considered top of the line. Right now, I think I have 100 or 120 meg download, I think 5.6 upload with my Comcast connection. And I'm sure for those of you watching this, you may have similar or even better connections. And this is the big point I want to mention, going back to the retail stores. This is my, mark my words moment. I think that once the year that the broadband issue gets completely solved, as in it's available cheaply and powerful for everyone no matter where you are, suburb, city, the farm, if you live in a cave somewhere, you'll get reliable internet. The year that that happens, I think that's going to be the nail in the coffin for GameStop. Because at that point, developers and publishers can basically cut them out. We have certainly seen that on the PC right now with Steam, GOG, etc. And I mean, for myself, I cannot remember the last time I walked into a GameStop and bought a retail copy of a game. Now, of course, I bought things on Amazon and got them shipped to me. But going into a GameStop or a Best Buy to buy a PC game has been a very long time. And of course, we can talk about indie games. You don't need to be in GameStop to sell your indie game, as stuff like The Binding of Isaac, Stardew Valley, Gone Home, and so on can certainly attest to. And I think once that equation, once that problem gets solved in the console side, it's going to be very interesting to see the state of the industry. One of the big things that has been keeping GameStop in business has been their used game market. It goes, why spend $60 on a new game when you can buy it for $45, $50 used, or trade that in? But let's say that an online store like PSN or Xbox or whatever Nintendo has says, well, we'll sell our game for $35 new if you buy it digitally. What will you choose then if internet access is no longer a factor? I think a lot of people will go with that. Now, of course, there's still the idea of owning the physical copy, but as we've seen over the last few years, that has been downplayed more and more with, less manuals. Sometimes you just get the game and the disc and that's it. There's not even a manual in there. And that, I think, is kind of where we're going and why streaming is a very interesting option in the future. Now, like I said, I think we're still too soon to say whether or not things will change radically. But as you know, last year with PlayStation Now and Sony blocking EA access, if Xbox Game Pass does take off and if they are able to get a sizable audience, I'm sure Sony and Nintendo will be looking at that further. But let's wrap things up here. So to summarize, streaming games has been becoming more and more popular as options have grown and as broadband internet access has become more standardized and more powerful across the country. And as we're seeing, this is definitely ways of developers and publishers of cutting out retail stores. And that has been something that I think has been a very long time coming. Because again, if you can figure out a way to split your game's profit 2 ways instead of 3 ways, you're going to do it. And if they can cut out a store like GameStop, who, as we know, developers have hated used copies for years, then that's a win-win for them. Now, what that means for us, though, is another story. As you know, with stuff like Netflix, Hulu, and I think Amazon's service, they have been trying to sweeten the deal with having original programming. As we said with Netflix with the Marvel series, Amazon has had, I think, multiple shows as well. And I think Hulu does as well. Again, I'm not a streaming guy right now, so I don't know the specifics. But will the day come that Nintendo or Sony or Microsoft will say, well, if you sign up to our streaming service, we're going to release games that you can only play there? And not just, simple games. Let's say massive titles, 40, 60-hour long RPGs that you can play for $9.99 a month. And you can get it immediately when it's available. What about MMOs or competitive games? Imagine having a online game like World of Warcraft or a subscription model game that subscription gets folded into this streaming price. So just imagine for a second if $9.99 or $14 subscription from World of Warcraft also gets you, an entire library of games as well. Or if you subscribe like a DC Universe subscription or a Sony subscription, gets you the whole catalog of games as well. That would be a huge deal, and that could very well be a game changer, no pun intended, for how we buy games when it comes to digital and streaming. But again, let me know what you think below. Like I said, it's still too soon to tell. The Xbox Game Pass is going to be due out, I believe they said late spring. So we still have time, much like with Steam Direct, to talk about this stuff. And for those of you wondering what we're going to be talking about with Twitch streaming, or the Twitch thing, I'm sure we'll get to that with the Game Wisdom Live this week. But with that said, let's wrap things up here. Thank you so much for watching. We broke another milestone this week with having over 1,400 subscribers on YouTube, and I'm sure we may be hitting 1,500 real soon. So if you're enjoying things, be sure to like and subscribe. Check out our Patreon if you want to get on the fun with these guest critical thoughts. And like I said, be sure to tune in for that sometime in March. But until tomorrow, have a great night, and I'll see you all then. Thank you so much for watching this video. If you enjoyed it, be sure to like and subscribe to the channel. And of course, share with your friends. It always helps out. For daily posts on all manner of game design and industry topics, check out game-wisdom.com. To support the site and everything that I do, be sure to check out the Patreon campaign. If we can hit goals, it will mean more content for everyone to enjoy, and I'll be able to support myself and my household. If you want to follow me, you can find me on Twitter at GWBycer for updates throughout the day and random thoughts from me. And lastly, you can find me on Twitch right over there at GW Bycer for daily streams most nights around 10 Eastern. Thanks again for watching the video, and be sure to check out more great content coming to the Game Wisdom channel real soon.